Ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you are joining us across the globe and elsewhere, a hearty welcome to the Geneva Center for Security Policy on this 2025 Transformative Futures Day. I'm your host, Associate Fellow Dr. Paul Vallée, and I'll be accompanying you for this afternoon's proceedings. As often, we have prepared a two-part show to mark not only a Transformative Futures Day, but also to proceed with the awarding of the third Transformative Futures GCSP Prize. We will begin in the first hour with the usual webinar that is animated by the head of global geopolitics and global futures program here at the GCSP, Professor Ivan Ureta, who is his guest. We will then have a break at halfway around 4:15 here Geneva time. And then resume 15 minutes later at 5:30 in order to discover the winning prizes. I also want to inform, of course, all of you who are participating that as has been the case on other editions of this show in the past, you're able to take part this afternoon in a prize draw in order to win seats on the different sessions of the Geopolitics and Global Futures Symposium that will be held in 2026. I will announce the results after the mid-afternoon break. For now, it's my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of the GCSP, Ambassador Thomas Greminger, who's recorded this welcome message for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the third edition of the GCSP Transformative Futures Day and Prize Ceremony. An occasion for us to come together to imagine, design, and champion bold ideas for a more peaceful and secure world. This event was conceived to help us look over the horizon, to foster the kind of thinking, collaboration, and innovation that is essential for navigating today's complex global challenges. I would like to extend my thanks to Professor Ivan Ureta, Director of the GCSP's Geopolitics and Global Futures Department, and to Ms. Anne-Caroline Pissis-Martel, Director of the Global Fellowship Initiative and Creative Spark. Under my direction in 2023, they co-created this prize as a platform to recognize forward-thinking contributions to peace and security, and I'm deeply grateful to them and their teams for their continued commitment in bringing today's program to life. This event is more than just a gathering. It is a space for reflection and action. Together, we explore how we might rethink entrenched systems, shift mindsets, and catalyze meaningful change in how we prevent, manage, and resolve conflict. Based here in international Geneva, a global hub for peace and diplomacy, the GCSP proudly contributes to this mission through inclusive dialogue, world-class executive education, strategic publications, dynamic events, vibrant fellowships, and pioneering project incubations. These initiatives form a powerful ecosystem for advancing sustainable peace and security. To all our staff, fellows, partners, and wider GCSP community, thank you for your unwavering dedication to this cause. Your energy and insight continue to shape our impact across regions and generations. This afternoon's program is divided into two parts. In the first session, we will explore the intersection of transformative futures, technologies, and human-centered executive education, a topic that is shaping the future of leadership in peace and security. While technology can open doors to progress, it also presents new risks that we must anticipate and address. We are glad to have Dr. Ivan Ureta, GCSP's Director of Executive Education, guiding us through this vital discussion. In the second session, we will celebrate the 2025 GCSP Prize for Transformative Futures in Peace and Security. This year, we received an extraordinary 196 project submissions from innovators from across 65 countries and 6 continents, reflecting a truly global commitment to advancing peace and security. Submissions address some of the most urgent and complex challenges of our time, from climate change and cybersecurity to transformative technologies and education. Human rights emerged as the most explored theme, with 52 proposals, followed closely by education and climate change. This prize honors individuals and teams who dare to challenge assumptions, inspire new thinking, and create innovative solutions for global peace and security. I encourage you all to stay for the ceremony and join us in recognizing the bold vision and commitment of this year's laureates. In a world that too often feels fragmented and uncertain, it is easy to lose sight of what is possible. But as the many proposals show, through innovation and a creative spark, it is possible to transform our world for good. Let this event be a reminder of the importance of the power of ideas to drive change, and a call to action to build futures grounded in dignity, security, and cooperation. Thank you for being here and for contributing to this inspiring journey. We look forward to an enriching and thought-provoking event ahead.
And after these welcome words from Ambassador Grimminger, I will now pass the torch to the head of Global Futures and Geopolitics here at the GCSP, Professor Naif Al-Rodan.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ambassador Grimminger. Welcome to you all to our Innovation Day at the Geneva Center for Security Policy. I'm Naif Al-Rodan. I'm the Director of Geopolitics and Global Futures Program and the co-creator of this prize with our distinguished director, Ambassador Grimminger, and distinguished colleague, Anna Pissis-Martel, who's the head of Global Fellowship and Creative Spark. Our event, as mentioned, is in 2 parts. The first is our keynote speech, and the second is the prize ceremony, where we will announce the top 3 winners for the 2025 version of the prize. First, to our keynote speaker. We are extremely privileged and honored to have our Innovation Day keynote speaker delivered by our Director of Executive Education, Dr. Ivan Ureta, who's a brilliant scholar and a distinguished executive across many disciplines and many countries. He's going to talk to us about transformative technologies and the human-centered approach to executive education. He will do this for about 30 minutes, followed by a Q&A session for another 30 minutes, which I will moderate. So kindly, as he begins to speak, enter your questions into the Q&A function. And during the Q&A session, I will call on to you personally in the order that it was entered to ask your question orally. For now, the floor is yours, Ivan. Thank you for making the time to be with us.
Thank you very much, Professor Al-Rodan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a great honor for me to be here sharing with you some thoughts and experiences that I've matured in the field of the executive education. I'm going to be sharing my slides. Yes, so I will be speaking for about 30 minutes, and after that, as Professor Al-Rodan have said, I'm very happy to engage in a discussion to clarify or to go discussing in deeper detail what I would like to convey to all of you. So I'm new to the GCSP. I arrived 3 months ago. I've been working before as a director of the executive education at the University of Applied Sciences of Southern Switzerland. And I'm bringing with me several years working as a professor, of course, in executive education, but also, as I said, as a director of the Department of Executive Education. And today I would like to talk about transformative technologies and the human-centered approach in executive education, because I do believe that nowadays executive education has an enormous potential for impact in shaping the way we conceiving and acting in the current scenario. We are living in a precise moment or context in the world where, demographically speaking, the continuing education and executive education is becoming more and more important. And therefore, we are going to be talking more about these issues. During the introduction, Ambassador Greminger was pointing at some very important issues like collaboration and innovation, current and future challenges, the necessity to shift mindsets in order to make a more secure and peaceful world. So I do believe that the executive education has, as I said, the potential to deliver that. I always like to start off my presentations with this picture here, which is a picture of a rough ocean. I'm coming from the Basque Country, from Bilbao, so I'm very much linked to this kind of context. The sea, how rapidly changes the scenario, and this image for me is quite self-explanatory of the situation in which we are living today. So it's a very unpredictable, very turbulent ocean, which is a fluid kind of a context in which we have to navigate or to try to remain afloat in order to do the things that we have to do, basically. So we are somehow living, and there are many ways of defining this kind of scenario. There are acronyms that have been coined to define a VUCA world, for instance, this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. There's BANI, there is many other concepts to define this huge uncertainty in which we are living and in a context in which we will have to make decisions. Normally, when it comes to making decisions, and this is very important when it comes to executive education, because at the end of the day, and I believe that this is the central point when we are talking about executive education, it is how can we teach or help professionals to improve their decision-making processes. So for me, this is the most central aspect that defines what executive education is. It is basically making or allowing or helping, assisting business leaders or political leaders in order to make better decisions. And normally, good decisions can be made easily in a situation where you can more or less predict the situation in which you are living. But once the scenario, the context changes, it is way more difficult to make good decisions. And I'm not talking about good, efficient decisions, but I'm talking about those decisions which are ethically and important to deal with the existing challenges. So on the other hand, apart from this fluid, very turbulent context, we also have in front of us this lighthouse, which for me is not only the light that guides you towards a safer heaven, but it's also for me a clear representation of, amidst this turbulent world, this ocean, we have a strong, a core element which is rooting ourselves in our decision-making process. And this is an important thing, which is basically our values. And this is something which is also very much related to our identity, our professional identity. How do we tackle with all these elements and challenges? So I always like to start with this evocative image. Another point that I would like to mention, because we are talking about challenges, very complex scenario, difficult times, and of course we are referring to history. And I'm a historian myself, and this is one of the things I've learned. First of all, when I decided to study history, I had to try to convince my peers or my parents or why I would did want to study history. And of course, is something that you have to be very convinced about, because it is difficult to get a job as a historian. You can end up as a professor or a teacher at a school. You can work at a library. You can eventually enter into academia. But the essential thing for me about history happened the first day I entered the classroom at the university. And the dean of the faculty entering the class asked us something very, very important. Why are you here? Why are you interested in knowing more about history, studying history, if you know that it's going to be very difficult for you to find a job? So for sure, the basic answer that all of us know about history, and we all concur with the fact that history is important because it allows us to better understand the past, in order to better understand the present situation in which we are living, in order to prevent falling into future difficult situations. So it might have a sort of a preventive kind of element. But after that, and this is the common wisdom, right? So history is important because it allows us to better know the past, better understand the present, and predict or try to predict or solve the problems that we may face in the future. But after that, and after several years of experience working in different parts of the world, considering that history is something very important, I completely changed my mind. So I don't believe any longer in this cyclical aspect of history. We always saying that history is something which is happening all over and over. It's something cyclical. But after that, I have reflected that history is not something which is happening beyond ourselves. History is something which pertains to us, is a product. So, and it's a human-made product. So human beings with the mindset, with the way we think about things, our actions, we create history. So history cannot be seen as something which is something external from us. So history is a product that we create every single day, and it's accumulated, and that is defined as the history as we know it. So history, from this perspective, it's a product of the human mind. It's something which is constructed. So the thing that is being repeated over and over is not the history itself, but the mindsets that we as human beings reproduce over the time. So we cannot expect a change in the way how history evolves if we are not changing the way we think and act daily. So this is something very important that I wanted to share to all of you, which is important to reflect about the importance when we are talking about transformative futures. It is a matter of thinking about how can we transform the present, because eventually this is going to be the force and the energy which is going to be transforming the future. So the future is not going to be transforming itself unless we are not taking the responsibility of changing the mindsets that have been reproducing history over and over the years. So it is also important to have a look at this, because we are talking about technology, and we have been experiencing how technology has been evolving over the years and the rapid growth of those technologies. We can see in this slide this technological evolution on the image on the left hand side. This trend has been skyrocketing over the last 20 years, and which is increasing more and more. When it comes to executive education, it is true that we have been witnessing how the COVID-19 has been accelerating the integration of those technologies in the executive education, in continuing education, which is in principle very good. But at the end of the day, and ultimately, technology should be something that could be have to be used and interpreted for the good of the human beings. On the other hand, in the middle image of the graph, of this slide, what we are seeing, it's another element that I wanted to put into context. And it is the number of economic crises and depressions that we have been facing over the last centuries. And we can see that in the last centuries, this increasing interconnection have been provoking more and more economic crises, depressions, and it is interesting to see how technology from this point of view is not necessarily allowing us to better manage the present and the challenges that we are facing. But on the contrary, there seems to be a correlation between the acceleration of growth in technology and the interconnected economic crisis and depression. So are we using wisely the technology, or to what extent we are using the technology but keeping our same mindsets and the way we have been doing things in the past? On the other image, in the last one, in the right hand side, what we can see here is the way how the global risks have been evolving over the years. You all know these graphs from the World Economic Forum, which are very interesting, and it shows us how the priorities or the global risks are evolving very rapidly over the years, over the last 20 years mostly. It is the case that we are analyzing at the moment. So when it comes to facing or managing these issues, it is very important to how can we, through executive education, improve the way we look at things, the way we decide, how are we improving our decision-making processes in order to make a greater impact, in order to better deal with this. I'm not saying resolving or solving problems, but managing the problems that we have or the challenges that we have ahead of us. And it's basically related to the way we see, we deal with things. When we talk about transformative technologies, we have a number of those who can have an impact on executive education. We can talk about the artificial intelligence, brain-computer interfaces, biotechnologies and neuroscience, quantum computing, clean energy tech, advanced manufacturing, space technologies, blockchain, Web3, extended reality, nanotech, material sciences, and all the applications and declinations in the executive education or continuing education. So I'm not going to enter on that. We all know how these new technologies or these transformative technologies are disrupting the way we have been looking at things so far. But for me, the important thing is, and coming back to my central point, is precisely that. It's like having an old car with a very big engine. So how is it possible that this car can efficiently run with an engine which is that big, which is not proportional to the capacity of this car? So for sure, if this car starts running with this engine, we are precisely focusing on that. So there is big power, there's big engine with an old mindset and approaches. So the combination, it's a very difficult one to get to be logic to work. And I do believe that we are somehow, for the reasons that I explained earlier, that we are somehow in this situation. We have an amazing amount of technologies, potentially transformative technologies, but with very old mindsets and approaches which are not fitting, which are not matching, and that could create rather than positive impact, rather negative impact, because it goes beyond our capacity to better integrate them responsibly into our decision-making process. As I said earlier, and I have already mentioned that several times, executive education and continuing education is very much about how can we teach or help business leaders or politicians or diplomats or whoever enters a classroom in executive education to co-build new knowledge together in order to improve the decision-making processes, because ultimately this is the central aspect, as I said, about executive education. But when we are talking about improving decision-making processes, for me, the most important thing, and this is, I believe, our responsibility, as directors or people working in executive education is to make it clear that the very fact of allowing or supporting participants to improve their decision-making processes is to decide ethically, to take more responsible approaches to how do we deal with things. And it is very common to get things wrong from this perspective, and we think that ethics is theory and practice is another thing. I'm also, apart from my job here at the GCSP, I'm the president of the Swiss Business Ethics Network, which is the Swiss chapter of the European Business Ethics Network. And this is something that I've always faced over the last years, especially talking to managers or C-level leaders from different corporations when you are talking about ethics, and they all may concur about the fact, oh yes, it is very important to talk about ethics and to integrate ethical behavior in the companies, and the principles are, and this is something that they have been always saying. I mean, the principles are very noble, but the reality is something different. And I think that this is a fundamental excuse not to act and to act responsibly, trying to separate which is theoretical and which is practical. And I think that the most clear element when we are talking about ethics is that it's not only theoretical, it is very practical. This is a thing that I always try to convey to business leaders, to participants in courses of executive education. It's very easy to defend yourself on the other side of the barricade, saying, no, but I acknowledge the principles are very noble, but the practice, the reality is a different thing. And I always say that the nobility of the principle is not related to declaring that the principle is noble, but in the practice. So the nobility or a principle becomes noble once you start practicing it. So it's basically the way you walk your talk. And in this image here, you have a Professor Edward Freeman. He's very well known at the global level as the father of the stakeholder capitalism. And he says something very interesting when it comes to ethics, which is, as I said, something very practical. And he says that ethics is about what I want and what you want and how we bring this together. It is a conversation about how we will live together. So this is an exchange, it's a dialogue, which is very much linked to this constant practice about how can we develop a certain narrative or create a new narrative that is going to bring us to a new reality, to a new phase of, or also a consciousness, which is going to allow us to better understand the context in which we are living. And we, as human beings, are taking agency of our capacity of changing things, because otherwise, what is going to happen is that we are going to enter into this dualist world when we are always the victim of something outside, which is jeopardizing our existence. Can be history, can be whatever. This dualist approach, which is converting us as victims. So this is something that I always talk or focus on when I'm working on executive education with executives. Don't mix things. I mean, theory and practice should be correlated. Don't get or don't try to defend yourself. Try to find an excuse to avoid this responsibility. The responsibility that you have to act ethically to develop a new narrative. And this is, I mean, and acting ethically or deciding ethically a new narrative that has to be developed. What for? But basically for creating self-value. So I'm going to be taking the business schools as examples of how this executive education has been evolving over the years. Because I think it's very relevant. Even though we are at the GCSP, which is the Geneva Center for Security Policy, focusing on the public sector, diplomats, politicians, military, and so on and so forth. I also like to integrate into the equation the private sector, the corporate world. So if we are talking about making the world more secure, more peaceful, we cannot take out of this equation the corporate world. It has to be very well integrated, as we all know the importance that the economy and the corporations have in shaping the world agenda, not only national agendas, but also global agendas. And when we are talking about different approaches and different narratives, we should be thinking about these two opposite approaches. The first one is the shareholder capitalism and the stakeholder capitalism. The shareholder capitalism is championed by Professor Friedman, which is basically about maximizing profits for shareholders, increase shareholder wealth, and this is very much focused on that. I mean, the main reason for a company or a corporation to exist is to generate as much profit as possible in the short term for the shareholders. Professor Edward Friedman, as we said earlier, has developed since the early 80s this new approach, which entails also a different narrative, which is the stakeholder capitalism, which is mostly focusing on integrating into the equation all the stakeholders that can make a difference in shaping the way we think about things, and is balancing the needs of all groups of interests, long-term value for everyone. So it's more focusing, instead of the short-term benefit, on the long-term sustainability. So this is a radical shift in the mindset that has been pushed over the years, and with huge success, especially in the corporate world, aiming at better understand what is the main responsibility of a company, of a corporation in the world. And then there is the creating shared value, which has been developed by Michael Porter from Harvard University, which is precisely that. The main reason, the main purpose why we are doing something is precisely for creating shared value. And this is an evolution in the mindset, the new narratives that we have to develop in order to find which are the most radical and important elements which are going to ensure the basis or the principles for a more secure and peaceful world. As I said, business schools are a very interesting case when it comes to executive education. They have been the most clear examples of how executive education has been developed over I will say, the last 60 years. But the important thing here is to better understand which is the role they are playing, which is also the responsibility in shaping or inviting people to create new narratives and exit old mindsets and old approaches which are not generating new perspectives. So I have a couple of quotes here. The business schools, according to Cornwell, says they appear above all as places busy reproducing or miming reality, where science faculties describe management, teaching establishments imitate. But the other thing which is quite relevant, especially in this book, which has been published in 2012, Business Schools Under Fire, Ernst von Kimakovich, which, by the way, he lives here in Geneva too, he says that in a time of instability, trust in managers is low. Management education is being scrutinized for its impact on society, and business schools have been considered as silent partners in corporate crime. So I think that executive education has been producing a generation of leaders, of business leaders, who have been basically focusing on this shareholder approach, this maximization of profit in the short term, which has been generating very, very bad results. And this is not only a question or an approach that has been only applied to the business environment, but has been also applied in the political and the private sector, the same approach. So it is very important to change these mindsets. I show you here Henri-Claude de Bettigny's. He is one of the pillars of the executive education at the European level. He's a professor of management at INSEAD in Paris, and he was one of the first professors of the executive education in INSEAD more than 50 years ago. I've been talking to him because when I entered this world of executive education and responsible leadership, I was very much interested in talking with these pioneers of executive education. And in one of our interviews, he was telling to me that the real quantum leap lies in transmitting, in addition to techniques and tools, an awareness in the leaders of the future of the real values they can promote. It is a demanding and challenging approach that many teachers today are taking. Not all of them. Many, unfortunately, still limit themselves to teaching the Friedman paradigm and the concept of profit maximization. Some deans are of the opinion that it is necessary today to address these new challenges. Others, on the other hand, fear that these new approaches may create a rift between their schools and the business community on which they often depend. So when we are talking about business schools or universities or executive education providers, it is very important to think about this dependence related to those who are financing us. Because they might have an agenda, they might have several set of interests that we have to meet. And this is something that, especially when we are coming to what Henri-Claude de Bettigny has stated in those sentences, it is very clear that companies which have been developing their activities following this profit maximization and speculative kind of approach in the short term, they are asking the business schools or the providers of executive education to educate their leaders according to this approach. So business schools have been providing training according to these needs, to the company's needs, and because they were having funds and they got funded by these corporations. So that's generating is that the input from the business schools, especially meeting the demands of the corporate world following this specific approach, it's been generating a vicious cycle that has been perpetuating over the time. So here, the important thing is to break this vicious circle and to take into consideration that business schools and providers of executive education have an enormous responsibility to change the mindset if we want to change the results. And we are aiming at a more secure and more peaceful kind of a world. We have to dare to change this speculative behavior and integrating from this perspective, but not as something nice to have, but consistently a human-centered approach. A certain human approach, which is very much related to humanistic management principles, which are consolidated in concepts like respect for human dignity, the integration of ethical consideration in management decisions, engagement with stakeholders. So these are the main three pillars around which this humanistic management principle evolve. The interesting thing is that, at least in my experience, in many schools, in many institutions providing executive education training, they are happy introducing the business ethics course, the responsible leadership course, and this is like adding these homeopathic drops, which eventually are going to have an impact or an effect on the participants. Whereas the most important and radical change here is not just only integrating in the curriculum these homeopathic drops, but making that consistent across the whole offer of the executive education. So in my case, I could share some examples about that, how I have transformed executive education department, working on these principles, but working with the whole faculty, working transversally in the application of this aspect, this human-centered kind of approach, which is a big success, especially if, for me, if I'm talking about an executive master in business administration, I want the professor of finance or accounting to talk about transparency, to talk about the importance of the human being, to talk about the ethical considerations of accounting, for instance. So making a collective effort to change the mindset and to create new narratives. Because if we don't enter in this collective engagement and commitment, of course, we are going to be back and this old Mini with a big engine, and we are going to be unable of producing good and sustainable results. So in my experience, I've been declining this human-centered approach also in research, in the aspects of ethics and finance, cooperating in some publications like this book here, working also with a famous professor in marketing, Philip Kotler, which recently have published a book which is titled Humanism in Marketing, Responsible Leadership and the Human-to-Human Approach. So you might also think that it could be difficult to think that marketing could be something ethical, where companies are using marketing as a means for attracting more consumers and so on and so forth. But there is another twist to that, where for sure you can use marketing also from a different perspective and make a different impact. So it is a matter of changing or challenging the common wisdom in order to approach things differently. Another case of my own research, which I'm going to be finishing shortly. I'm going to show it later at the end. So, because at the end of the day, when we are talking about executive education and the human-centered approach and transformative technologies, it is not only the temptation of teaching organizations and participants about knowing and doing, but being. So this is the most important thing. It's not only, and this is something that I always have explained in the classroom when I talk with executives and participants from the different corporate world or whatever companies. So I'm not here to give you a hammer to teach you how to use the hammer for solving all the situations. I want you to know which kind of instruments you can use to make better decisions and more responsible decisions by focusing on that, on human being, on who you are, on your identity, in order to better understand which are the implications of your daily actions and decisions. So I'm going to be finishing this presentation with the latest book I'm working with. I already talked about Professor Edward Freeman, so we are working now together in a book which is called Challenging Polycrisis, New Narratives, Responsible Leadership, and Humanistic Organizations. So when we proposed this book, and when I was working with Edward Freeman 1 year and a half ago about this precise research, I was thinking that we as a corporate world, as experts in executive education, we have to teach people how to do things differently. And he said something very, very enlightening to me. He said, the best way of criticizing something is by creating something better. So we should be trespassing these mental barriers and common beliefs, saying, no, but we have been always been doing the things this way. We have to keep doing things this way. So and I do believe, and this is the last message I want to leave with to all of you before we enter into the discussion, that new technologies are not transformative per se. And the new technologies can be transformative or will be transformative if they are guided by purpose and new narratives. So from this perspective, if we are talking about the connection between human-centered executive education, we have to, or we aim at discussing or figuring out transformative or transforming futures, we have to think about how can we transform the present? How do we change the mindsets now? And not buying time or inventing excuses to do that. And technologies, if we are adopting them with a strong set of values and a purpose, then they are going to be transforming, because they are going to be used for a higher purpose, which is specifically tackling the challenges that we are experiencing today. So thank you very much. I will stop now and I open the floor for discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Very, very interesting and highly insightful. We appreciate your wise words. Just to remind our audiences, please enter your questions in the Q&A function. Meanwhile, I'll get going with some questions while we wait for additional ones. I fully agree, Ivan, with your pushback on the cyclical idea of history and the constructive nature of history. But given the speed of an exponential technological change, how, in your experience in executive education and business schools and the like, how have you found the most efficacious way for collective engagement in this mindset, given the speed of information, most of which is junk, it's not real information?
Yeah, thank you very much, because I think this is a very good question. In my experience in executive education, especially with business leaders, what I have seen is that they are, apart from their role of executives in their companies, they are human beings. So they are human beings which who have, apart from the professional identity, many other identities. They have many roles, different roles in life. And the very fact that we are living in a very turbulent world, that's generating a lot of insecurity, difficulties to understand the current context. So for me, when you enter in a classroom and you give the opportunity to participants to reflect about more about who they are, to reflect more about their identity, the impact of their work, to dig into their, more self-awareness, if you create those conditions, people start realizing the importance of behaving differently, because they might prioritize things in a different way. So we are somehow lost in this situation. We have, as you said, enormous amount of technologies, a lot of information, but what can you do with the information? How can you transform information into knowledge and knowledge into wisdom? So we are very much trying to catch or to try to understand the sense of the context in which we are living. So the moment you are using the executive education as an excuse to work more on purpose, on identity, on sense of things, I think that you are changing the life of people. So if I ask a very simple question to an executive in the morning, say, why are you getting up early in the morning every day? Explain me why. So a very simple question, a very domestic kind of an example that triggers a lot of questions in the executive. I have seen many executives which I've been asking to them in several dynamics, please close down your eyes for several minutes. And some of them having difficulties of getting their eyes closed because they are feeling loss of control. So the way you use executive education in working more on self-awareness and the sense of what we are doing, especially today, especially considering that we are lost, even though we might pretend that we know a lot of things and we are very much under control, we are very vulnerable. And as you mentioned, we are living in these very speedy times, and this vulnerability becomes even deeper and deeper.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Very, very interesting indeed. I'll read the question from one of our colleagues here at GCSP. From Ines, she says, from your experience, which presents a greater challenge on executives over-reliance on emerging technologies without a clear understanding of their limitations, or excessive skepticism that hinders timely adoption and innovation?
I will have a look to it. I think that in general, technologies are very good. Technologies enable us to do things more efficiently. We all think that we are living in this rapidly changing scenario. We all say in our CVs that we love change and we can adapt to change, whereas at the end of the day, we are very much comfortably sitting in our comfort zone. Nothing wrong, but we naturally, as human beings, like being or sitting in our comfort zone. So from this perspective, there is on one hand this tension between how new technologies can change the way we live our daily lives. They are pushing very much the way we are living. And there is somehow a reluctance to change things. I think that in general, human beings being very prone to remain in this comfort zone, we are like natural procrastinators. And we are somehow also lazy. So technologies are somehow making us more lazy. So I can use a simple example. I mean, we can use our smartphone to navigate or to walk across a city, whereas 30 years ago, we just opened up a map or asked questions to the people on the streets, interacting with humans on the streets. So somehow these elements are somehow making our instinct lazier. So it is not a matter of how good or bad the technology is, but the use we make of the technology. And we should not, as human beings, let the responsibility of the technology of making the decision that we might have to do as human beings. Because it's very easy to, I mean, if we are entering in this dualist perspective, that we are delegating the responsibility of our decisions and our actions to the technology. No, technology must have the attribution of helping us to do things better, more efficiently, but not, in our case, not to delegate to the technology the responsibility of our actions.
Thank you, Ivan. We have a question in the Q&A actually by Benjamin Aguio. Benjamin, are you with us? You can go ahead and start and ask the question directly to Dr. Ureta.
Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ureta, for your speech. It was very interesting. You were explaining how CEO of major companies are drag or following mainly the decision of the shareholders and of the need now to bring them closer to the interest of stakeholders. Rather, we have metrics to measure the benefits it brings to shareholders. Do you have metrics? Do you have a way to measure the benefits they bring to stakeholders, to the community?
There is a whole new discipline which is social accountability, which measures the impact of this stakeholder approach. Of course, it's a way larger way of understanding how a company impacts on a certain context. But there is I can provide it to you if you are interested in that. The research works that have been produced on this topic, which is a very specific accounting system that is being used, especially has been developed by Ed Freeman in collaboration with some professors from the University of Deusto in Spain and the University of the Basque Country, which are pioneering this social value accountability for companies, especially adapting the stakeholder approach.
Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, Ivan. There's a question on the Q&A function. It says, which specific transformative technologies, such as AI or immersive simulation, do you see as the most impactful for advancing human-centered executive education? And how can institutions ensure these tools enhance the interpersonal and ethical dimensions of leadership development?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. I think that you have mentioned in the question a very important concept, which is tools. Tools which enable something. So if we are using those tools without a program which is guiding the way we use those tools are not going to be transformative. They are going to be misused. So for me, the most important thing is to develop internally within the institution a philosophy that is consistently applied throughout all the content which are delivered in the or provided by the institution itself, and then to use those technologies to enhance that. So, but we should not only look at those technologies without having into consideration which are the philosophical elements, the identity of the executive education, which is rooted in this specific school or business or executive education provider. So this is an important thing to reflect about. It's not just pointing at the transformative or the new technologies for that, but how, I mean, it's making a step back. How can we develop a philosophy that is going to be using those technologies to support the advancement of this human-centered approach?
Thank you, Ivan. Talking about philosophy, you know, my own neurophilosophical view of the moral compass, of the human moral compass, is I have theorized based on neuroscientific evidence that it is governed for the most part, most of us, most of the time, by what I call perceived emotional self-interest. So self-interest is probably quite rigid, although it's probably a little negotiable. Emotionality is very deeply held as an evolutionary psychological paradigm. And the prefix of perceived is where I think the money is. So it's perceived emotional self-interest because we can misperceive either through our own lack of insight or deliberately on whoever is sending us the message to in terms of fake news or deep fakes or misinformation or disinformation. What is the executive education of human-centered approaches? What are the tools that it has and has found to be useful in fixing this increasingly problematic perception problem, whether it's intentional or unintentional in terms because of the volume of data that's out there?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that you have pointed at a very good issue, which is the thing of the perception. And the way we perceive influences and impact a lot on the way we act. And this is the energy that we use every single day to produce things and to produce results. So the result of our thinking is very much linked to the way we perceive. So when we are talking about executive education, and as I said earlier, it is very much about how can we help participants to improve their decision-making processes is precisely related to that. How can we improve the way they perceive things? But not only the way they perceive outside, but how their self-perception may change, and that is going to have an impact on the way they look at the external factors. So ultimately, if we are thinking that the world outside is a construction, it's the product of our minds, if we don't improve this self-perception, I mean, the world is going to be going the same way. I mean, there is going to be the same result. So from this perspective, it's very much important to insist on the importance of this core issue of the self-perception, of the importance of putting at the center of our decisions the set value that we can create, which is our responsibility as professionals to provide a good impact on society. And this is something that hasn't to be only declared, but has to be practiced. So tell me examples, how can you improve that? And don't invent the excuses not to do it. Because it's very easy to invent, I mean, and this is the central aspect about, or the tension between the rationality and the emotionality. So we are always very fond of saying that human beings are rational, but at the end of the day, we are using our rational side to justify whatever thing we want, emotionally speaking. So this is the perversion of our rationality from this perspective. We are always very good at telling stories, inventing narratives that are supporting what we want, emotionally speaking. So this aspect of perception is a fundamental thing. So and I always say the same when it comes to executive education. Putting the human aspect and the invention of the development of new narratives is central to construct new realities at the end.
Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you, Ivan. The question on the Q&A function, which says, you mentioned how trust in managers can be low during times of instability. I imagine that there is also a difference in the public opinion and the amount of distrust according to which business one is looking at. How do you account for this, and how can trust be improved for the ones that are especially distrusted?
Yeah, I think that this is a very interesting point because as we can have a look at how the new technologies have been skyrocketing over the years. On the other hand, we can see that all this technological increase has also, I mean, contextually speaking, accompanying an international scenario where there are a lot of economic crises too, and where the collective trust is declining. So in our societies, and this is the way how this say the way of the capitalism, the way how we have interpreted it, have created very isolated individuals. So we are not anymore like this collective reality. We are very individualistic societies. So if you are a very individualistic society, very isolated individuals having access to tons of information, you might believe that you are very informed, but you are not, and you can be informed, but you have very limited knowledge about things. And of course, this is generating, and this is one of the top threats that the World Economic Forum has identified as top risks for the next 2 and 10 years, which is the misinformation, the fake news, and so on and so forth. So how can we deal with that? So how can we increase the trust? Well, the way of increasing trust is related to, first of all, are we trusting ourselves as individuals? Because if we are falling into the same paradigms in capitalism, we are talking about this speculative short-term kind of approach, and we are behaving as such, it is true that we are not going to have trust in anyone. So if we are not developing a longer kind of more structured thinking, could be related to this stakeholder approach and this creating shared value approach, it is true that we cannot build trust because we are very much focusing on the short-term speculative kind of approach. So the thing is precisely that. The way of increasing trust is mobilizing the collective intelligence, putting at the center of the discourse of the narrative, the new narrative, the human being, and our responsibility to create shared value.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you.
Go back to peace and security in the international relations realm. As you know, our international system is what we call anarchic and a self-help system, because there is no overarching authority that arbitrates, never or even enforces anything. And it's really major powers decide the agenda in most fora. So how do we reconcile the stakeholder concept that you raised very well, and the long-term value in terms of sustainability? Business, is a great teacher because it's self-interest, it is timely, it's efficient. What have we learned? What can we learn from the business world to generate, instead of shareholder short-termism profit, into this stakeholder long-term values and sustainability in the peace and security realm?
Yeah, absolutely right. It is very difficult, but for the very reason it is very difficult, it doesn't mean that it has not to be attempted, a change, developing a new narrative. And I think that this is something that we are living today, and we are living in a global context where there are a lot of conflicts, where those conflicts can be criticized by some others prefer not to criticize them. But it is important that we stand as humans to talk about which are the central, the core aspects of what politics and politicians stand for. Otherwise, it's like in the business world, we might be only focusing on the stakeholder approach, trying to maximize the profit in the short term just to satisfy our financiers, and that is fine, but it's not going to produce a long-term benefit in terms of inclusivity and better society and so on and so forth. So the same thing is being reproduced in the real of international relations. So it is important to reflect about responsibility also in our institutions, to work with politicians, with diplomats, with the public sector, to reflect about that. It's not only a question of declaring the principle, but how do we walk our talk? And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of criticism, self-criticism, and but it takes fundamentally the question, where do we want to go? Which is our identity? Which is the long-term perspective that we want to develop?
Yeah, which leads me to what we call strategic culture, which is becoming increasingly relevant in international relations and security, which is this cumulative value system and an exaggerated and often skewed view of one's own cultural frameworks, and often a skewed negative view of somebody else's cultural frameworks. And because culture is highly emotive, it often gets in the way of doing the right thing, whatever the right thing is. And in follow-up to what you just said, this is a long-term exercise. The difficulty is because social media and this acceleration of disruptive technologies, include generative AI and deep fakes, some of these fringe ideas are exaggerated and made or normalized, made into mainstream. And for the uninformed part of citizenship, may adopt those ideas, thinking that they are more normal than they really are. And given the emotional nature of culture and the emotional nature of man, we're highly, as I've worked and theorized many times, we're emotional creatures. We're emotional, amoral egoists, as I have said. And it turns out from actually clear neurobiological and neuroimaging work that actually our emotionality is part and parcel of our most rational actions. So in fact, and there have been some studies in the US where patients were noticed to have a lesion in the emotional processing cortex, and they realized they couldn't make rational decisions anymore, which sounds very counterintuitive. So the linkage of emotionality and rationality is not dichotomous as philosophers over the centuries have thought. They're actually two sides of the same coin. And that makes it very difficult. I share your views on that, that given the accelerated view of all kinds of junk being thrown at all of us, including youngsters who may not have the background or the intellectual discipline or judgment to dissect what is truthful and what is not, and can be hugely impactful on their view of themselves, of their milieu, and of the other, which is more important. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with what you have said, and that I think that it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of education, a lot of understanding of what technologies can do for us, and not what can we do for the technologies. And this is a radical shift in our mindsets, because we are living very much bombarded by those technologies. We are suffering this informational stress. The way we perceive things is completely distorted. And therefore, the thing that we will have to eventually start doing is precisely stepping back a little bit, taking more perspective. I mean, you cannot change your perception if you don't have a better perspective of what you are looking at. And this is something that we all have to practice in terms of, okay, how can we acquire more self-awareness? How can we acquire or the practices that we can develop to have more self-inquiry, who we are, which our identity. Of course, it is very difficult to do that, but I think we as teachers, professors, providers of executive education, we do have the responsibility of helping participants to change those views. And in my experience, you don't change the 100% of the mindset of the people you have in class. You might have impact on 1, 2, 3 immediately, but you are planting a seed there which might eventually grow in the midterm, in the long term. Everybody of us have a different path, a different pattern, the way how we process and understand things, and the way we face life. And life, from this perspective, throw at us the things that we need to learn. So it is important that we don't lose that hope of insisting in a human-centered approach, for participants of the executive education courses, in order to try to better understand the way we perceive and we act on our daily basis in our work, which is the purpose, the sense of what we are doing, who we are.
Very true, Ivan. And given the fact we live in a so-called post-truth age, it's really hard, even for those of us who are enlightened and aware, to really find something that is 100% accurate or correct. Things are become so muddled up. And of course, it's not helped even in accountable democracies when you have electioneering sound bites that hype fringe ideas for electability and to feed on the grievances or misperceived grievances of a section of society. And all of a sudden that alienates another section, but propagates most people, not sophisticated enough to know what they're being told is really accurate or not. And so I think politicians and people who aspire to political office have a huge responsibility, because what they say is often perceived by their followers as semi-truthful, if not fully truthful, even if it's a fringe idea. And that seeds all kinds of, going back to trust, mistrust and insecurity and fear and alienation. And that does nothing to accentuate all the wonderful ideas you've shared with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I think we're almost out of time. Ivan, you've enlightened us beyond our expectations, which is not unusual. Thank you very, very much. We've learned a lot from you, and you've honored our Innovation Day excessively well. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights.
Thank you. Thank you very much to you and to the rest of the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Professor Al-Rodan, and thank you, Dr. Ureta, for, of course, this really fascinating exchange, and of course, enhanced by the questions that you in the audience have been speaking and writing into our chat function. So we're now going to mark a 15-minute break. And we'll resume at 16:30 Geneva time. And of course, a reminder to those of you participating, you can still join the prize draw, and we will announce those results when we resume at 16:30. So stay tuned and see you very soon. Thank you. And welcome back to the Geneva Center for Security Policy this afternoon for the second part of our GCSP Transformative Futures Day, and we're now going to proceed with the awarding of the prize for 2025 in Transformative Futures in Peace and Security. I'm passing you on to Professor Nayef Al-Rodan to introduce the prize and the members of the jury who've awarded the prize this year.
Thank you, Paul, very much for your very elegant leadership of our Innovation Day. Welcome back to all of you. And now we move on to the second part of our Innovation Day, the 2025 prize ceremony for Transformative Futures in Peace and Security. And I just want to take a moment to thank our very distinguished jury members who have worked very, very hard to critique and rank the finalists and pick the final top 3 winners. And they are Alexander Barclay, who's a delegate for digital policy from the state of Geneva. Miss Sophie Dupuis, who is an entrepreneur and founder of SOW Consulting. Professor Dr. Andreas Wenger, who is a professor of international and Swiss security policy at ETH in Zurich. Ambassador Thomas Grimminger, our illustrious executive director at GCSP, myself, and my distinguished colleague, Anka Pissis-Martel, who's the head of Global Initiative, Global Fellowship, and Creative Spark. Just to reiterate what Ambassador Grimminger had said, that this year we were very impressed with getting 196 applicants from around the world, in fact, from all 6 continents and from 65 countries. So you can imagine the amount of work that our staff had to go through to bring it down initially to 15, and then for the jury to pick the top 3. So my thanks to our distinguished jury and to our staff in both my department and Anka's department. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Professor Al-Rodan. Of course, we'll very briefly before we announce the winners, we'll announce the winners of the other contest today, which is the prize draw for winning a seat to the 2026 Geopolitics and Global Futures Symposium. So in 2026, this symposium will actually take place at 3 different dates. You have 2 days in January 2026 devoted to the future of outer space security. In April, 2 days devoted to neurophilosophy of global security. And in October, 2 days devoted to transformative technologies and the future of global security. So, of course, very much in line with what the Transformative Futures Prize is today. So without further notice, I'll announce the lucky winners in increasing order for the prize draw. The third prize is a seat to any one of the modules, so you can choose with a value of 500 Swiss francs. And the winner is Mr. Abdullah Al-Taleb. Congratulations, Abdullah. Second prize is actually 2 seats to any of the 2 models you choose, and that has a value of 800 Swiss francs. And the winner is Miss Sabina Stadler. Congratulations, Sabina. And finally, the first prize, so that's a seat to all of the 3 modules of the symposium, was a value of 1,200 Swiss francs. And that goes to Mr. Zurab Bejanishvili. Congratulations, Zurab. So that's it for the prize draw. And we will now move over to the announcements of the winners that the distinguished members of the jury have chosen from all of these very worthy contestants who applied this year as well. And it will be, of course, my pleasure to be the first to announce the winning team of the 3rd place, and that awards them a GCSP certificate of recognition. And so the team that won 3rd place in the 2025 Transformative Futures Prize in Peace and Security is AI-based humanitarian dashboard for disaster prediction. And this is a project that comes to us, was submitted by Mr. Jose Scioli and Ms. Abril Garcia Moore, who belong to the Humanitarian Observatory of the Argentine Red Cross in Buenos Aires. Congratulations to you. And I think we will now hear from Abril to speak on behalf of this team.
Yes, thank you so much, Paul. It's amazing to be here with you today. The Humanitarian Observatory of the Argentine Red Cross, here with me is Jose as well. Would like to thank the Geneva Center for Security Policy for this valuable recognition. This award is for us, without any doubt, an incentive to continue working and investing all of our efforts in our AI-based humanitarian dashboard for disaster response. We would also like to thank the Argentine Red Cross and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies for entrusting us with the task of producing evidence and leading innovative projects like this one. We would like to take this opportunity as well to recognize the millions of volunteers and humanitarian personnel in our movement who dedicate themselves to serving the most vulnerable communities and saving lives. That humanitarian commitment is what drives at work at the observatory day to day. So thank you very, very much to them as well.
Thank you very much, Abril. Congratulations to you and your team. We'll be speaking with you later on to talk more about your projects, along with the other winners as well. I now pass on to my colleague, esteemed head of Creative Spark and the Global Fellowship Initiative, Anne-Caroline Pies-Martel.
Thank you, Paul. So it's my honor to announce that the project that won the second place today is Prescient, a Futures and Foresight program for health security, submitted by Dr. Elliot Brennan in Geneva. This outstanding project has earned a GCSP certificate of recognition. Congratulations to Dr. Brennan for this achievement and important contribution to the field of health security. Dr. Brennan, the floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to receive second place in the prize. I'm really humbled to join this community of inspiring ideas. Thank you to GCSP and all those who participated to make this prize possible, judges and other participants. It's a real pleasure and a real honor. The recognition, I think, reflects the importance of foresight and preparedness for acute health security threats, and the need to better equip ourselves during the current period of disruption and rapid change. So I'm very thankful and thank you to GCSP.
But it's now my pleasure to pass over to Professor Naif Al-Rodan, who will announce the winner of the Transformative Futures Prize in Peace and Security for 2025.
Thank you, Paul. It's my distinct pleasure to announce the top first place winner for this 2025 prize. And the winning project is called Space Talk, and it was submitted by Mr. Benjamin Guillot from Lausanne, Switzerland. This project wins the Certificate of Excellence, a prize trophy, and a fully funded 2-month incubation in our Creative Spark department led by my distinguished friend and colleague, Anka, worth 15,000 Swiss francs. Many congrats, Benjamin.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Naif, for this prize. Thank you really to the GCSP for having selected Space Talk. It's a great news for us. It will give us a great boost for our development and for the launch of our platform, which is for the coordination of space traffic worldwide, for a safer outer space, and for ensuring also an observation in outer space for all astronomers. This is really an amazing news for us, and I must say it is an honor for Space Talk and our team. It rewards our vision and our actions. You know that the GCSP obviously knows that the management of global space traffic, the sustainability of outer space, and the safety in space are crucial challenges for the years to come, for the coming decades. And these recognitions offers us a considerable visibility at a decisive moment for us. So we would like to warmly thank the jury for selecting Space Talk, which demonstrates our shared vision of a future focused on a peaceful communication between all peoples for sustainable and equitable use of space, which is obviously in the common interest of all the inhabitants of our planet. And of course, I would like to thank my partners, all of them, for supporting this project. I would like to thank also EPFL and the Swiss Armed Forces, who are supporting us and providing their expertise, and also all the smart and nice people I've met at the UN, at ITU, who I could talk to and who gave me the insight and their view of this problem, which is not an easy problem. We have to stay humble in front of such a challenge, but working as a team, I believe that we can solve it.
Well, congratulations, Benjamin Guyot. We'll, of course, be returning to you in just a minute. to talk in more detail about what Space Talk is and where you're heading with it once you join the Creative Spark. Of course, it will be a pleasure to meet you on this occasion as well. Of course, congratulations to all three winning teams. Thank you very much, of course, to the members of the jury who have actually leafed through these many submissions that we once again received from so many different areas of the globe, and really our testimony to the creativity, the power of the mind that all of these dedicated teams really put towards finding a way towards a transformative future as well. So we'll now, of course, turn to our winners and take about a dozen minutes with each team to get to know them a little bit more and their projects as well. And of course, all credit to the prize winner, so Benjamin. So Space Talk, yeah, obviously, of course, you have the background that fits with it as well too. We understand that it's a project that is both about data sharing and about building trust. And so Space Talk is positioning itself as a neutral coordination platform among competing spacefaring nations, as you can see on the diagram that he's sharing with us. So could you tell us how you plan to build trust with national actors who are traditionally reluctant to share operational space data, even voluntarily?
Yes, indeed, it is a challenge. Thank you very much, Dr. Vallée, for this question. I'm showing here indeed just a slide showing what our plans are. And it is not a humble objective, it is a bold objective, but you know, without any objective, we will never be successful in anything. So our objective is really to enable a dialogue between all space actors, all space operators, launch service providers, satellite operators, space forces, space agencies, academia, insurers, all people involved in the space traffic for a sustainable use of outer space and for avoiding a conflict in outer space. Space traffic today is managed per region or per countries. Main space powers are not willing to exchange data, in particular China and USA, Russia and Europe. What we want to do in Switzerland is provide a platform, a neutral platform to facilitate this dialogue. We want to do this in full transparency. And this is how we want to convince, and that's how we address already main space actors, is by providing a system offered by a private company, implying no compulsory system, but a flexible system that we provide in full neutrality and transparency and equity. We are open book. People can see what we want to do. We also provide a secure access because people want to exchange and to talk about space in a safe manner. This is understood. And it is based, as I said, in Switzerland, which is a neutral country, but not part of NATO, nevertheless aware of space activity with good expertise in space activity. And I must also say that, you know, this project is about putting order in outer space. And that's what the Swiss people like to do. During the weekend, people in Switzerland clean their home. So this is kind of a habit. We are boring people sometimes in Switzerland, but it's useful for this kind of project.
Well, thank you. So let's return also to some of the technical terms, because Space Talk is going to emphasize, so as you explained, technical interoperability with all of the existing systems. And those include both SSA, so of course, Space Situational Awareness, and STM, so Space Traffic Management. And the question here is what specific measures will be taken to ensure and build a broad compatibility between those different technical systems?
Yes, so today, as I said, the space traffic is managed by these countries or region. Originally, it was done by the US Armed Forces. Now you have systems in China, in Russia, in Europe, and these systems do not talk to each other. And they want to manage this because they want to keep control over their own spacecraft. It's a question of sovereignty. So our goal first is not to do what they do already. We just put in common what we see as a common denominator between all space actors worldwide, meaning very simple, an inventory of space objects, including operational satellites and debris, together with directory of space actors, so that for each object, you have someone to talk to coordinate a maneuver. It means that we do not provide data ourselves. We just provide the means of communication. We provide also something which works in 7 languages, in all languages of the United Nations, and also compatible with all communication data standards. Because sometimes one operator can tell about the trajectory of its own space object, but this data will not be understood by another operator because you have different standards. So we develop a tool, a technical tool, which is translating this various way of communicating data so that all space operators, all SSA actors, so space situational awareness actor, can keep using the way they want, can keep using their own language, own standard, and deal with their own spacecraft. They will just use our system if they want to coordinate with operator based in opposing space powers, let's say. And the other thing is that we provide a fully open API. We don't force people to use our platform. We want to let them work the way they do. We want to be a growth vector for the existing SSA actors by creating a worldwide marketplace where they can exchange data. So we don't want to bring a new complication in the system. We want to facilitate the system and to be a growth vector and to take into account the economical aspects from the beginning.
Thank you. And all credit due, we actually have a question for you, Benjamin, from Professor Al-Rodan. So I'll pass it on to him.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Benjamin. I was very impressed with the project. And I'm the head of the space security cluster here at GCSP. So we do a lot of work on space, both security, safety, and sustainability. And I'm very impressed with your bold, as you called it, vision. But given the national security concerns of various states, whether it's RPOs, whether it's situational awareness, not many states are going to declare their space assets and their location. And as you know, there are about several thousands of the 30,000+ objects that were sent up are what we call black objects that were never registered with the UN because they're all military intelligence satellites. How do you fill this gap? Or do you not intend to do that? You just put in the data that's available? Or is there some other way through mega constellation of seeing these objects, even if nobody takes ownership of them?
This is the question, huh? Absolutely. How do we deal with classified satellites, with these military satellites that we want to talk to? So there are many elements answering this question. First, we take into account the military aspect from the beginning, because it is a reality, as you say. Space is used by the military mainly not to carry on weapons, because it is forbidden by the Outer Space Treaty, but to observe, to look at on the ground. And as you say, they do not register the spacecraft. First, we talk to the armed forces. That's the reason why you collaborate with the Swiss armed forces, because we want to understand what are they need. Because after all, space forces are space operators like others, meaning that they have assets in outer space. They would like to keep these assets. And if there is a collision, they will be impacted like the others. Second, we adapt our service to their need. We are not interested to intelligence activities or information. We do not provide information about the activities of the spacecraft. We are just interested in information needed for the purpose of the space traffic. Third, we do not force members, actors, to register the spacecraft. If they don't want to register the spacecraft, that's fine. We will then allow them to decide to remove their spacecraft from our own inventory. But the fact is that, classified spacecraft today are 10% of the operational spacecraft, and even less if you count space debris. It's 0.01% of all objects in outer space. So it's not that much. And the fact is that today, armed forces believe they can hide objects in outer space, but it is not possible anymore, because if we can find an exoplanet 5 light years 5 million light years away from here, it's clear that any astronomers can look at an object returning around the Earth and see what it is about. So believing that you can hide an object by not registering it is just pointless. But still, it's true that militaries still believe this. So we count on the fact that with practice, with time, they can first remove objects from the inventory. But if the French, for instance, remove an object from the inventory, the fact is that all the main space power nations know exactly the classified object, because all main space powers have their own registry, so they know where these objects are, and they would like to be able to contact other space forces about this. So we count on the fact that people will understand with time that the best way to hide an object is not to try to not register it, but to declare it as a normal spacecraft. And we can then, with practice, to have things evolving in the right way. And we address this topic with main space forces, and actually, they agreed with us.
Thank you.
Okay, and I will now actually pass you on to Anne-Caroline to make a few remarks herself.
I'd like to congratulate Benjamin and the whole team of Spacetalk for this achievement, which is a testament to your vision, hard work, and innovative spirit. And on behalf of everyone at the Creative Spark, which I head, I'm delighted to welcome you to our incubation program soon. And at the Creative Spark, we believe that innovation is more than just having great ideas. It's about the courage to pursue them, the resilience to overcome challenges, and the passion to inspire others along the way. Today, we celebrate not only your impressive work, but also the transformative potential it brings to our communities and to the world at large. So we are excited to support you as you take your project to the next level. And within the Creative Spark, I'd like to assure you that you will find a vibrant community, expert guidance, and countless opportunities to help your idea grow and thrive. We look forward to seeing you forge new partnerships, foster creativity across borders and disciplines, and inspire us all with your unique perspective. So once again, congratulations and welcome to the Creative Spark and the GCSP family.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My final question was indeed, of course, about your joining the Creative Spark and having an access to the different ranges of expertise and knowledge at GCSP on subjects like neutrality, but also high-stakes geopolitical context as well. And also maybe a question that we can also add to that, which is sustainability, which deals, with issues of shaping norms, sustainable behavior, debris mitigation, fair access, protecting the dark sky for scientific research. So do you have some early impressions of what you'll be doing thanks to joining the Creative Spark?
Yeah, first I will ask questions. I'm a lawyer myself. I've been working for the European Space Agency, but I'm not an expert, far from this, an expert of diplomacy. I need to learn to understand if we are following the right path to talk to various countries, if we have the right cultural approach. I need some support to talk to some countries, and I need also people to assess, to judge, and to tell me. We need to be humble and both bold for this project, because, as I said, we need the vision, but still understood that it is a difficult challenge, and it will have to progress step by step. So that's exactly this kind of expertise coming from you is exactly what we need for Spacetalk, which is a technical project, having a bottom-up approach, but with a very important diplomatical aspect.
Well, thank you, Benjamin. We'll be looking forward to meeting and talking with you in the near future. So congratulations again on this first prize and joining the Creative Spark. We'll now turn to our second runner-up. The representative for the and conceptor for the project Pre-Science. So I'm going to Dr. Elliot Brennan. I hope you can hear me well. Elliot?
I can, Paul. Thank you very much. And I hope the internet connectivity has stabilized now. But thank you very much for this recognition. It's a great pleasure to receive second place. And I'm really humbled to join the community of inspiring ideas. Just to talk a little bit about the project to begin with, Prescient builds on work over the past 10, 15 years at the intersection of foresight, health and conflict. It focuses on health security in the context of chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear acute threats. And these threats include those related to accidents or attacks on biosafety labs, nuclear power plants, biological chemical weapon attacks by state and non-state actors. CBRN threats really have that potential for mass casualty and long-term health impacts. The mere existence of such threats can create panic and disruption, including to health services. So the project aims to provide a comprehensive framework to strengthen CBRN preparedness, and in this current sort of fragmented and rapidly changing geopolitical landscape, to build some of that cooperation at the state level as well.
Well, thanks, Elliot. That precisely, of course, leads to the first question, which is that, a lot of these threats have often been talked about in isolation. But what you're doing with Prescient is actually a convergence of geopolitics, health security, and foresight together. And why do you think that this convergence is important to achieve right now?
No, yeah, look, absolutely. Threats occur as part of a system, and the fragilities within that system. So the interconnectedness of our world sort of means that threats can quickly go viral. That narratives of one country, whether they're generated by mis or disinformation, can quickly run rampant and have unintended or malign intended impacts. So looking at threats within the system that exist is one of the first pathways, I suppose, to finding those solutions. These narratives are disrupting the world that we've known for decades, whether they're political, economic, legal, social. It's really important that we get together and understand threats within the system that they exist. The convergence of these threats really means we need to up our game to find new solutions, to anticipate these threats, and to build the networks that can really tackle these systems-based threats. So this is really why the project itself tries to bring all these different elements together through the lens of foresight through multiple actors.
Now, I understand that you've worked on CBRN scenarios in Ukraine and also on global simulations. And so I was wondering what those real-world experiences taught you now that you're shaping this project together.
Absolutely. So this project really is built out of the experience over the last 10, 15, my professional experience over the last 10, 15 years in different environments in Asia and Europe and elsewhere. One of the main learnings is that solutions need to be generated at the local level. They need to be tailored and built from the ground up. But different sectors within different communities speak about and understand risk differently, and the remedies to those different problems are understood differently at different levels. So dialogue is really key to preparedness in that way. Getting people together to construct, to understand the problem on the same page, and to construct those solutions together is really important. And there are issues that can transcend grievances, I believe, that can remind us of our sort of shared humanity and bridge people from different sectors, from defence sectors, from the health sector, where it's really important we're working together in some of these particularly difficult threats as well, which do spill over to across different areas, different sectors. When we identify risks and anticipate possible futures, we're more resilient as communities, and I think we're more resilient as individuals as well. And that's something that I think is really important. The keynote Ivan was talking earlier about how we retreat to our comfort zones, and really pushing us forward and out of our comfort zones is what this project hopes to do. Building those networks that get people talking about what keeps them up at night and how they can work together, how they can articulate that to other people, and how we can work more collectively to tackle some of those threats.
Well, building onto that, so of course, let's say one of your scenarios actually starts unfolding. So what or where do you hope that policymakers would do differently because of pre-scient, having access to pre-scient work?
Absolutely. So the project aims to establish those lines of forward thinking, solution-oriented dialogue to support more timely decision making. Simulation exercises are wonderful ways to get people thinking and working together, particularly across different sectors. Reviews, after action reviews or interaction reviews are other tools that are particularly useful to help us to identify problems, what we did well, what we didn't do well, what we can do better, and really build better standard operating procedures for threats across different sectors is really important. So this project is really about human connection. That's where the rubber hits the road when we're talking about cooperating and effective, practical strategic foresight. It's where we could connect people who might be working in a hospital to people who are working in the police force, frontline responders coming from very different backgrounds, often with very different mental models of the world, and helping them to identify common risks, common threats, and common solutions. Secondly, I suppose next to this is I really want policymakers to have already thought through creatively about problems, for their creative problems to for their creative problem solving to be a muscle that has already been to the gym, shall we say, that doesn't only get exercised during a crisis. The more we can exercise that creative solution, problem solving in peacetime, the better it is going to be applied during a crisis. And lastly, I think what's really interesting is how we use AI and what our value add is to AI, which increasingly is taking over a lot of the response to these sort of threats, and where we as humans actually insert ourselves, and where we put AI on the back burner, when we turn it off, how we can work together going forward. So where do we as first responders, emergency coordinators, policy and decision makers add value during a crisis, and how can we override the established SOPs, standard operating procedures, where we need to inject humanity, or where there isn't a precedent, I suppose, really looking at those things.
Yeah. Oh, well, and maybe finally a bit of a foresight here. Where do you see the model evolving, say, in the 5 to 10 coming years? And do you think foresight is going to be better institutionalized as part of our regular policy making?
Absolutely. Look, I think over the last 10 years, even 20 years, there's been an increasing movement to institutionalizing foresight in government. With current, and there's some actors which are more successful than others on this front. institutionalizing it across the board. I think particularly within the UN system, there's movement there now as well. It doesn't always feed into senior level planning and management, and I think we're seeing a bit of that unfold now, where the UN system was caught a bit flat-footed this year, and we're seeing responses which are a bit ad hoc rather than something which was planned and more thought through. What I expect is that foresight will be one of the things that gets cut from budgets over the next 12 months as government budgets get struck down. What I really hope is that we can weather that crisis and over the next 5 or 10 years build more strategic foresight into government. The EU does a wonderful job now with different think tanks and different foresight products they produce, as does the OECD and as does countries like Singapore. The bigger the system, the better the harder it is to turn the boat. So I think what we need to do is really learn from each other what works and where we can sort of build sort of that impact. Foresight is no longer a nice to have, I think, in this. It's really an essential part of our governance landscapes in the current situation that we find ourselves in, the current landscape of rapid change that we live.
Well, thank you, Dr. Brennan. We may, of course, also come back to you and Benjamin later on with some other questions from the audience. And we're now going to go back to Buenos Aires to our Argentinian runners-up team. And we're speaking with Abril Garcia Moore. Of course, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Paul. Are you seeing my screen okay?
We see that. Thank you.
Great. We would love to congratulate the other winners as well. Their projects are really inspiring for us, and they are really in line on what we are seeking from the Humanitarian Observatory, from the Argentine Red Cross. And it is an honor for us to present our AI-based humanitarian dashboard for disaster response. With this dashboard, we aim to build a predictive analytics tool using AI to model future scenarios that allow us to anticipate trends and humanitarian issues with a significant impact on communities. The main goal is to optimize response times in our movement in critical situations. And as I was saying, and the screen shows, we want to build this dashboard with a wide range of validated data from reliable sources, such as government agencies, humanitarian organizations, and universities as well. And we seek to include climate information, socioeconomic health and vulnerability indicators to provide predictive analysis that enables humanitarian organizations, as we are part of in the field, to make informed decisions. And we think this not only improves response capacity, but also significantly reduces the impact of disasters and increases the resilience of affected communities. As we show on the screen, our goal is for the dashboard to model possible scenarios by estimating what would happen if humanitarian interventions were implemented or if no action were taken. And in order to assist in preparedness, the tool will provide guidance on the necessary needs and operating procedures for each crisis, for example, as shown, climate change.
Thank you. Of course, this is very clear. What we've been wondering, of course, is whether from your perspective in Argentina, whether there was a specific moment or a specific crisis that made you realize the need for the humanitarian analysis dashboard, and whether you've identified sort of any gaps that the project was meant to fill.
Being a part of the Argentine Red Cross and the International Federation confront us to several crises every day. Day to day, we have been having massive floods here in Argentina in the past few weeks, affecting thousands of people. And ever since AI began to play a prominent role at the fourth industrial revolution, we saw real potential in its application to improve global humanitarian response and local humanitarian response here in Argentina as well. And as the observatory, we know we have the responsibility to build this kind of innovative projects. I think that the major challenges that we face here in Argentina and at the global scale, such as climate change, forced displacement, or violation of quality life, help us to think how a dashboard and how technology in general could help us to anticipate disasters rather than just react to them. In the Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement, we work on the ground to assist the most vulnerable communities. And in emergencies and disasters, our response is still reactive. And this is because the existing anticipatory tools still provide very short-term information. Climate indicators are a perfect example of that. And it is in this challenge that the AI-based dashboard project is based on. We truly believe that if we can evolve on anticipatory decision-making based on evidence, we will have the potential to improve planning, resource execution, and humanitarian staff preparedness as well, amplifying the positive impact of our action, saving lives, and promoting community resilience.
Yes, well, that's of course what you've emphasized. To follow up with that, what's the difficulty in striking the balance between predictive analytics and the real life complexity on the ground, which you as workers are familiar with?
Yeah, that's an amazing question, because it's an everyday question that we make while developing the project. There is no doubt that predictive analysis is a tool for anticipation, but without any doubt, it is not a replacement for humanitarian action on the ground. We believe that complexity of real life cannot be fully captured by an algorithm. So we're seeking with this project is to provide anticipatory information that helps actors and volunteers on the ground, who are the main actors that are improving their preparedness and saving lives every day. We think it is vital to nurture the dashboard with validated data so it can predict based on statistical trends. But we also believe that it's really important to nurture it with experience on the field. Our movement has over 15 million volunteers and 192 national societies, and that is a unique context which this AI system that we are developing can be integrated. And it's a privilege as well, because we already have all that stuff on the ground changing lives. We think that predictive information can improve planning, but will not replace the direct action of these volunteers and humanitarian personnel. We think the dashboard aims to serve them and to adjust to their needs.
No, thank you, of course, for reminding us of the work that all of these volunteers across the world do in the same way that you do in your own country. And so, with having earned the certificate of recognition by the GCSP, and to tie into exactly your links to the whole Red Cross movement on a global scale, the final questions would perhaps be about what do you think that in, say, 5 years' time communities could be saying about the use or the impact of your dashboard? And do you see it eventually becoming a model for other Red Cross societies? And how easy do you think it might be to replicate the model in a different region or context, whether it's Southeast Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa?
We believe and we hope that the impact of this tool can be measurable in terms of improving people's quality of life. So in 5 years, that would be our biggest hope, that they experience fundamentally the strengthening of preparedness to accompany and assist them in humanitarian crisis. That's what our movement does, and we believe that integrating AI and technologies can strengthen that way. And we are currently working on the first pilot that is based in Argentina. That's where we are from, and it's focused on climate change. But the next step is to expand it to our entire global humanitarian agenda and to other regions as well. Again, we have millions of volunteers and 192 national societies, so we are not free riders in this process. We're part of this large scale and the world's largest humanitarian organization. So that's our context and our opportunity to scale up the proposal in regions such as you've mentioned. But we really believe that the main challenge is to adjust and adapt the data to local realities and to be aware of social, economic, political, and cultural factors when implementing this kind of system. Rather than imposing a rigid model, we truly hope that we can develop a flexible tool that adapts to the specific needs of each context and to the humanitarian personnel as well. And we think that integrating the system will be informed 100% first by the field experience of the volunteers, then by the links with official public organizations that produce reliable information about their communities, and as well by the support from research and evidence centers working in each territory. So we are hoping to integrate all of these stakeholders and actors in the scalability of this kind of tool.
Well, thank you so much, Abril Garcia-Moore, for telling us about the dashboard as well. Congratulations again to you, to your whole team, to Jose Scioli, who led it as well. So we're very excited to hear about it as well. And now, by my count, we have about 9 more minutes for all of you participants to ask directly your questions to any of the winning teams. Over to you. Do we have questions in the chat function? Well, I see one question. I'll perhaps read it out. It's a question that's directed to Space Talk. Your project really is quite impressive and timely. You touched upon the military and their interests. How do you plan on remaining a neutral platform, even if you might receive pressure from different nations who wish for you to choose a side? So that's for Benjamin.
Thank you, Ana Camila, for this question. Indeed, neutrality is not always well understood. People expect you to take side. However, this project makes sense only if we are fully independent and neutral, and it is a startup. We are looking for financing, and people were telling me, well, what about if you are bought by Elon Musk? The fact is that if we are owned by a major space actor or space power, we come back to the situation where we are now, or where we were a few years ago, I would say, before we created our company. So independence is key for the success of this project. What is also key is that we provide the core system for the communication, and then we must be fair with all commercial offers that could come together with this platform. We have to be fair with all service providers providing SSA, STM, orbital data. We must give equal conditions to all these companies wherever they come from. And then the third point is that, if there is one day a consensus within the UN, either the ITU or the COPUOS, for such a system that would be managed by the UN, it is fine for us, because I wrote this way to the UN. I told them that if there is a consensus and Space Talk must be integrated within an international organization, it is also fine for us. We can find a good governance scheme so that, a foundation or an association where all space stakeholders would be able to have a share. Such foundation would give license to Space Talk for managing the platform, so that the system is managed and owned by all main space powers. I mean by member states of the United Nations.
Thank you very much. I believe that Professor Rodan has a question as well.
Thank you, Paul. Abril and Jose, I'm most impressed with your project. Really It's like one of those things, you know, the mark of it's like a good theory or a mathematical equation. Why didn't somebody think of this sooner? It's so obvious, but the credit goes to you. And this is such a valuable tool. In your experience and analysis, what kind of disaster you think is most amenable to your predictive analytics? I mean, I understand that it covers everything, but what is the most likely in terms of efficacy, in terms of your ability as a Red Cross, Argentina, or and elsewhere, to respond in a timely fashion?
Thank you. Thank you for your words, Nayef. We are developing, as I said, the pilot on climate change here in Argentina, while working with other research centers from the International Federation, as well as public officials, such as the National Weather System. We became with the answer of your question that climate indicators are most likely to evolve on a trend, even with climate change going on and changing the scenarios every time. We have a lot of data from 30 years ago, so we can build statistical trends on climate indicators. And as well, we are experiencing in Argentina, among other humanitarian crises, there's massive floods. We experienced a really, really harsh drought that affected our whole economy. So we believe it is more likable to build trends on climate indicators. And as well, we believe we have an urgency to, in a way, transform our protocols to have anticipatory information, because we are now reacting to them and we are not being able to manage an operational procedure that can estimate a possible impact in the future. For you to know, our climate indicators can predict from now to 3 days on the future. So we just know if it's gonna rain and estimate just how much. And now on the pilot that we're working, we are developing a tool that can estimate from here to 3 months in the future. And that may seem like a little change, but for us is really, really massive and huge. And we are not the only ones interested in this. The National Weather System, when we talked about with them of the potential of the tool, of course, they became really, really interested as well. So we think that for the time being, we have to put our efforts on climate indicators and climate change as a humanitarian crisis.
Thank you very much, Abril. I have a question that's addressed to Dr. Elliot Brennan. The question is, what inspired you to work in the area of CBRN? And are you sometimes scared when witnessing how some nations are not working enough on their resilience, or sometimes even approaching CBRN in too light a manner?
Well, thank you for the question. CBRN threats are the threats that keep a lot of people, including decision makers, up at night. As such, they're one of the best areas to provoke meaningful dialogue and discussion around how we can cooperate and how we can move toward the futures that we want, our more preferred futures. These types of threats bring together people from different sectors in particular, and often with different mental models. From frontline health workers to defence and to cybersecurity professionals, and as such, they're really effective ways of bringing people together to break bread over the same issue in the same room before crisis does occur. The mass casualty potential of CBRN events challenge an entire system, both at the community, national and international level. And the long-term, often cross-border health impacts mean that there's a significant impetus to adequately prepare for such events. And I suppose lastly, just the mere existence of such threats can create panic and disruption across societies, including to health services. So understanding how we are responding to them early provides the confidence to respond to correctly. So CBRN provide one of the most acute threats to provoke practical discussions between actors and between different sectors. And they provide an opportunity for practical activities to conduct after-action reviews of what's happened previously and build simulation exercises around issues that might need to be addressed, and to talk about the future to really get people working together.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I don't know whether we have any other questions, though we are coming to the close of our show. If we have any more, there's one more question to Abril. Does your dashboard AI statistical integrated models allow for highly probabilistic prediction of natural disaster?
Yes, that's what we aim to, and that's why we're focusing on climate change. We're really interested and we are eager to include socioeconomic and vulnerability indicators as well. And that's the main challenge we are facing right now, because as I was saying, natural disasters can be built by a trend based on the past and based on the present indicators. But for example, poverty or vulnerability in infrastructure is quite more difficult to build a trend over the future, because it depends on human decisions as well. And of course, we are not gonna be able to know which economical politics will have the next government and the next administrations. So we think it will be really successful on natural disasters, and we're still working on another kind of humanitarian crisis.
Well, listen, thank you very much, of course, to all three winning teams for taking the time to speak to us and answer our questions about these very innovative projects. Congratulations once again to you three for having made the cut and being the runners-up and winner of the 2025 Transformative Futures Prize in Peace and Security. We will now bring our day to a close. Thank you very much to all of you who've participated and for your many very insightful questions. Of course, to Nayef and Ivan for the original webinar in the first part of the series. Of course, out there, keep sending in projects, because of course we hope this Transformative Futures Prize will continue on and will bring more innovation to this domain as well. And as we close, of course, I want to thank everyone here at the GCSP, all my colleagues who've been working very hard, from, of course, the jury members to the regular staff at the Creative Spark and the Global and Geopolitics and Global Futures cluster as well. In particular, so those who've been working on the technical side, so my colleagues Christine Garnier-Simon, Anna Rab, and Ines Casal-Bosch, who've made all the technical leg of this program possible. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We hope to see you soon at similar GCSP events. And from now, it's of course goodbye from myself, and be well and be safe.